this week's cut.
All right, here we go. Part 3, grind and taper. And I also added clay on the end. We're going to do a Hamon on this since it's a nice piece of W2. Thanks for listening. Sorry about the blurry camera. I don't know. It's kind of like mood video. We won't do any kind of porn music in it, but so here I take a marker and I mark the edge. Some people use Dykem. It's that blue stuff you can brush on, but that seems to be really messy to me. Takes a while to dry, so on this part I just use a big fat black marker. Seems to work pretty well for me. One of the reasons when I profile it, I make sure that I have the belt running parallel, so I lay the blade down flat on my rest. It makes scratches going the right direction so that when I mark the center line, it's easy to see. If you stand it up on end and run the belt lengthwise on the blade, it causes problems for seeing the marks. This is an adjustable center score. I think I got it at USA Knife Maker or somewhere like that. You just set the height of your carbide tip, and then I check it somewhere where it's not critical. So I run it on one side, flip it over, check the other side, and I don't know how well you're going to be able to see these center lines, but it just makes a mark right down the middle. Some people set it so that it leaves a small gap so you can see where you take your grind lines to. I don't do that. I just mark right down the middle. So I'm doing the edge, mark both sides so it's nice and dark, or nice and bright, I should say. Check it. Yeah, you can kind of see it. Do the spine. And I struggle with this sometimes. I wish I had a really big platform. They make another type that sits on a marble tabletop, and I haven't got one of those, but I kind of like how they work better. Nick Wheeler had one that I saw him use, and I liked it, but this is what I have, so this is what I use. I go all the way around the blade because I'm going to be tapering the tang, so I want to know where center is on that butt as well for when I taper. If you don't have a mark center score, you can take whatever thickness your stock is. So this is 3/16 inch stock. You can get a 3/16 inch drill bit, lay it on a flat surface, and run it around your blade, and that center point of the 3/16 bit will hit center of your stock. So hopefully that made sense. So you lay them both down flat on a table, and you can mark it that way as well. All right. Center scored. Here we are on the TW90. I'm going to start grinding the primary grind. I use a worn belt, not completely worn, like useless, but here I mark where my stop is, so I kind of fill in that center mark to know where to stop, and more of a reminder. Once I do one side, I can see on the other side where to stop. But so I was saying you use a used belt on this because, again, you're cutting off a 90-degree angle. You've got that sharp edge that wreaks havoc on your grit of your belts. So I do this part with a belt that's not new. And just keep grinding. So this is freehand grinding. That's what I do with everything. I don't use a rest on anything. So I also don't use a jig. I'm not an anti-jig kind of guy. But I just choose not to do it. I want to be able to grind wherever I am so that I don't have to have my jig with me. And it's worked well for me. It takes a bit more time to get used to it. But that's how I do it now. When I first started out, I stood up when I grind, but now I sit down. I can still do it standing up, but I prefer to sit down. I don't know if that's because I'm old or fat, but it works better for me. Just cleaning it up. So I get my cutting edge line down where I want it, just so it's, a little bit off that center line. Leave some meat there for the heat treat. A lot of people say for final thickness, do about the thickness of a dime, which I think is 20 thousandths. That's about where I stop. Sometimes I do a little thicker than that, because the thicker steel you have, the less chance it has to bend or warp and heat treat. So some people stop right there and then do their heat treat. And that's fine. You're just trying to get rid of that sharp edge, and then you can grind it up the side once the heat treat's done. I do that on my stainless blades and my blades that I'm not doing a Hamon on. I want some dimensional differences as it climbs up the side of the blade, so that still hardens at a different level. If you've got a thick chunk of steel and it goes thin like it is right there, you don't get as much variation or activity in your Hamons, at least as far as I've been able to tell, and that's something I've experimented with quite a bit. So I like to get my grind up pretty high. I don't go full height, but I do take it up pretty high so that I can get some variation in that Hamon as the clay fingers come down. It is important that you get both sides the same. I used to take calipers and measure points to make sure we're all the same. Now I'm able to kind of eyeball it, and it's never exact, but the reason you want them the same is because if you've got more steel on one side versus the other side, it tends to warp it because it cools at different rates and bends the blade one way or the other. So any variations you have from side to side will create problems in your heat treat, or can create problems in your heat treat. So I'm just working it through, dunking it in water just to cool it off. You're not going to hurt the steel by overheating it at this point. So you can go as hot as you tolerate. I hook my index finger on the bottom of that spine and use my thumb. When it starts to heat up, you'll see me in some points pull my thumb off because that blade gets hot, and you start feeling it through the glove. See, I just pulled my thumb off there. You can't really see very well. Sorry. It is what it is. Maybe I'll do a better one down the road when I figure out why I've got mood lighting on. Now I switch to the other side. And you can see I'm pushing fairly hard on it. As you grind more, you'll be able to put a little more pressure and grind a little harder and remove more material. But see me pull my thumb off, it gets hot. Another thing that I used to do at the start is I would grind, and as I came to the belly and that curve that curved up to the tip, I would drop my left hand and try to follow that curve so that it's square on the belt. And that's difficult to do. And I can't remember who told me or where I heard about it, but if you pull that handle, if you could just keep it the same level the whole way through and just pull that handle out away from the grinder, it'll make that grind run up that belly. So see if you can tell. I'm pulling that hand out now and running down. So I don't rotate it around with the belly. I pull the handle away from the grinder to make it climb down that belly. Hopefully that makes sense. Really hard to roll it around evenly and make it work that way. Now I use this magnet. I use this magnet a lot. This is so that I can get a good grip on it and not worry about the heat. So it gives me a little longer grinding time to remove more material before I have to dunk it in the water. I don't get as precise grinds with this, so when I'm doing my real cleanup, I will do it by hand without the magnet. But right now I'm just trying to hog some steel off that blade. Just more of the same. So I thought I'd leave it real time and what it takes me to grind a rough grind on a blade. And I can actually do it faster than this if I want to, but I wanted to keep it fairly even through the whole process. Pretty good. See, it got quite a bit hotter. So now I'm probably going to check and make sure my grinds are even and the height I want. So I put my finger on the spine where that grind goes off and just check the other side. I couldn't tell. Looks pretty good, I think. That bell, that's more rounded than this. So I'm going to hit that side a little bit, right in that portion, and I just focus in that area. I want to keep it flat still, but a little more pressure on the spine to get rid of that curve so that it matches the other side. All right. Pretty good. So I want to thin it out a little more. We talked about about the thickness of a dime. So now I'm just going to I'm going to keep it flat on the belt, but I'm going to add a little more pressure on the cutting edge to knock that side a little tighter. Checking again, make sure I didn't mess it up, so we're off. So this needs to come up on that edge, so I pull it out away from the grinder again to make it climb a little higher. And that takes a lot of practice, but hopefully you understand what I'm talking about. It's science and angles. Something's off there. I don't know what it is. So we got to make this come up a little higher still. It's fairly difficult keeping those grinds straight and even. Just takes a little bit of work, a little practice, but if I can do it, everyone can do it. I truly believe that. So just takes practice. I have the box of fail on my shelf. All the knives I've messed up on, it's just sitting in a box. I should hang some up on the walls to remind me where I came from and that I've gotten a little bit better. So all right, just cleaning it up a tiny bit. We should be close to done here. Looks good. All right, now I take my big fat marker again. I check and make sure I can still see my center line on the spine, and I'm putting this marker on, getting ready to taper the tang. Travis Wirtz sells a great device that attaches to this grinder that makes tapering tangs really simple. I just haven't gotten one, and this is how I've always done it. So until I'm ready to make that jump, I'll stick doing it this way. But pretty neat little device he made. Smart dude, that Travis Wirtz. We're heading out to his hammer in this next weekend out in Arizona. It's always fun. So I'm going to turn it to the side here. And you can see that gets a better angle on the belly. I taper it just by bringing the butt end in. Takes a steady hand. You can see as I grind, that black comes off. And that helps me keep my line climbing up even. If it starts climbing higher on one side than the other, I add a little more pressure. So see how it's kind of climbing straight up. And I hog the steel pretty quick on these. You won't want to do it that fast when you're doing it in the start, but just making it climb up. Now I've got it about where I want it on the spine, the thickness, and so I'm going to just add more pressure climbing up the spine, or up the tang. So you'll see that it's climbing up pretty quick here in a minute. So I've checked. It's about where I want it on that side. tell by my center line. And now I start climbing up. If my wife's in the shop and I want her to leave, I taper a tang, because it makes that grinder whine and chisel and chatter and chisel, is that a word? Chatter, and she hates those kind of noises, so she'll immediately leave. Sorry, Nikki. I know she's not listening to this. Boring. All right, still climbing up. I love these magnets. As you can tell, I use it a lot. That's a 100-pound magnet, and I can't remember where I got it. I think it might have even been Harbor Freight. I haven't seen them there. They've got kind of a different style there now. So if you find this kind of a magnet, that's what I like. So on this first side, I don't go all the way up through the tang. You can see where I stopped there up on the blade side, halfway up the blade maybe. I then do the other side. Clean off all the gunk that's stuck to the magnet. Now the other side. Now this side heats up really quick, and it's not a problem. It's not going to hurt your still, but it'll turn blue because it's reaching almost 800 degrees, but it makes your center line on the back hard to see. So I try not to heat it up that much, but you can see right there it got blue. I think I show you again. See how that blued up because I got it hot. It's thinner still because you've already taken it off the other side, so it heats up a lot quicker on the second side. So I do this in a little slower because I don't want that center line to turn all blue where I can't see it. So I think I've got it about where I want it, thick-wise, and then I'll start climbing up this wall. If you accidentally roll it and grind all that marker off on accident, speaking from experience, put the marker back on it and start doing your taper again. You'll lose track of where you're at and you'll get a funky taper. It'll be crooked. So just from experience, if you accidentally mess up and touch the belt all the way up the side and remove that ink, you'll want to re-ink it. So this one I took all the way off the top, did the whole side all the way up. So I'll flip it over after this. And sometimes I flip the blade over and do it from the bottom. My platen's got some funk to it just from grinding. I need to put it on a surface grinder and clean it up again, but it's kind of rounded a tiny bit, so I do that just to make sure it's squared up. Now I do the other side to get rid of the rest left up on top of that blade portion. All done, almost all done. There you go. And flip it over again. Nice. Check your lines. I don't know if I did. Check again where they come off. Make sure they're the same. Looks good. Checking my lines there just to make sure everything is still even based on the center line. So you'll see your widest point now on your blade is clear up there. As you grind, you can get some distal taper in there if you want to help with the balance and cutting. But for right now, that's how I leave it. All right. Now, I messed up on the first one. I'd already done some file work on the spine, and it wasn't recording. So you guys kind of miss a little bit. But I go back and show kind of how I did it. This is what I call the choil. I believe that's what it's called. That's what I call it. This is my old grandpa's file. You see that W on there? So the W in my logo is his brand. So he used to put that W all over everything. So I like that handle. Has kind of some sentimental value to me. So the file I use on that choil is just around. So I mark the scales to know where I want to put my jimping if I'm going to do jimping. I'm not a big jimping fan, but I know a lot of people like it. So I thought I'd do it on this one so you guys could see how I do it. This is a checkering file that you get from Brownells or any other firearms One's, I can't remember the teeth count. It's a fairly tight pattern. You can get looser patterns. And it's for checkering gun stocks. It's a good file. You have to be careful you're square and straight every time because you'll break those little tiny teeth off. But really all it is just a bunch of rows. I think this is 18, maybe, rows of teeth that are filing in a straight line. So that's how you get that jimping. At least that's how I do it. When I started out, I just did it individually with a file. I wouldn't always get them even. So this saves a lot of time and works really well. They're fairly expensive files, but they definitely save time. So I make sure I round that corner really well. So I'll kind of roll it down on the edge and get it really good. So you can see sort of the filing. All right. Here we are at the clay station. What I call the slate. That's also my hand sanding station. That's also my backrest when I'm tired. Turn the chair around and rest my back. But you can lift this piece of micarta up and pinch it between a piece of angle iron that's under there. And then I just use a clamp to hold it. And then that makes it easy to remove and replace. Genius. Thought of that myself. I don't know if anyone else is doing that, but you can steal it. And the cameras and the light kind of make it difficult, so I'm trying to move around. So this is what I use, Rutland furnace cement. I get a lot of people asking. Just make sure that it's 2700 degree Rutland's furnace cement. I find it at Ace Hardware. Home Depot and Lowe's, the big box stores for some reason don't carry this. They might have it in the tube version for like a caulk gun. I've seen people use that. It's the same stuff, it's just in a caulk gun. So you could do that. So I take some out of that big tub of Rutland's, put it in a little cup, add a little bit of water. So I cut it with water. I want it to be about the consistency of toothpaste, maybe a little thinner. Some people like it thinner, some people like it thicker. Don't put it on too thick. One of the biggest things I see when people are using it is that I think they just apply it way too thick. You don't need a lot. I mean, a 1/16 of an inch is really all I put on there. Maybe a little thicker in some areas just because I don't get it even, but it should be within that range. All right. I apply with a tongue depressor across the spine just to get some stuff on the blade. A little more on there. All right. So that's just my base. That's making sure that spine is nice and coated. So for those of you watching that don't understand what we're doing, the clay prevents, it holds heat. It also prevents the spine from heating up as fast. There's a little tool I got from my brother-in-law who's a dentist. It's like a little spatula and I love it. I've almost broken through it, so I need to get another one from him. The clay keeps the spine soft, so it makes it so that when you quench the steel, the steel that's exposed with no clay hardens quick, and the steel that has the clay does not harden, so you get a soft spine and a hardened edge, which increases flexibility. It allows the spine to flex. If you had a soft edge, obviously it wouldn't sharpen, it wouldn't hold an edge very well, so you don't want to do that. So that's what we're doing here. So that's called a Hamon, where the hard line meets the soft steel. Perlite and martensite come together. People call it a temper line, which really is not accurate. It's not a temper line. It's a hardness line. So I kind of scratch it up in here a little bit just to get a little maybe more activity in this portion. On a blade this size, really a Hamon doesn't serve a huge purpose. You're not going to be chopping trees down with it and everything. Just more cosmetic. All right, so I'm marking on the bottom side where my fingers come down. W2 and those that take Hamons are shallow hardening steel. So you can harden one side halfway through and not harden the other side, and it just becomes a straight line on one side and fingers on the other. So I want to line those fingers up so that I get good activity and a good pattern on my steel. So that's why I mark those, so I know where to bring those fingers down on the other side. Little tip I learned after ruining 3 phones. You can see on that little messy table over there, I've got my phone in a plastic bag. If you've got your phone out grinding in a shop, there's all kinds of fine metal dust particles in the air. Your phones have speakers. Those speakers have magnets. Those magnets will get your speakers completely caked up with steel, and your speakers will no longer work. So when I have my phone in the shop, I have it in a plastic bag so that I don't get steel powder stuck on my phone speakers. Anyway. Some people do thinner fingers. I kind of do fat fingers. I don't like what I call the clown Hamon, but sometimes I get that because I do this where it looks like a big wavy, big fat lines up and down and up and down. I don't care for that. Usually I don't get that if I do the heat treat in the oven right. So there's a lot of variables going in when you heat treat. Clay thickness, steel thickness, soak time, quenchant, what quenchant material you're using. There's a lot that goes into it, so you need to get everything together. And I'm not going to share everything. I've had some people share some stuff with me that I think they hold close to their chest. So in the process of all this, I don't share everything. You're going to have to learn some of it on your own. But I definitely am giving you a good place to anchor and start figuring stuff out on your own. So, at least I feel so. So I am getting the spine and the bottom edges on where I don't want it to harden. I can clean up when going back to those filing the jimping, because the spine is still going to be soft because I've got clay on it. I will be able to clean up that jimping after heat treat because it'll be soft enough for that file to still cut it. If this was a fully hardened blade, or like a Damascus blade or stainless steel or something like that, you won't be able to hit those with a file. It won't touch it. So you need to make sure that spine is cleaned up and exactly how you want it before you heat treat that. So I would clean it up a lot more and spend a little more time on that jimping if this wasn't a soft spine blade. All right, that's it. I hang it up, let it dry. I don't stick it in the oven immediately and let the oven dry the clay during the heat treat process. It tends to blow up and expand really crazily. So I let it fully harden before I do my heat treating. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments, and I will be sure to answer them.